the Real Hustle Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Chris Kiblin. Real hustle, real people, real results. You can help support our podcast by checking out our Real Hustle gear. We have t-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, hats, and more. The Real Hustle gear is great for the gym or even a night out on the town. Let everyone know that you are a real hustler willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done. You can check us out right now at realhustle.com, and right now we're offering all of our listeners 10% off when you use the promo code podcast at checkout. Once again, that is podcast to receive 10% off your entire order. realhustle.com.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Real Hustle Podcast. My name is Chris Kiblin, and I will be your host. We have successful people that come in from business and life, and they take us along their journey to talk about what it takes to be successful. If you're looking to be successful, then this show is for you. So today we have Chip White from Cask and Ale Restaurant and Bar. Hey, Chip, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Great. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
All right. So tell me a little bit. I know you have multiple businesses. You're in multiple different things. But tell me a little bit about, let's talk about Cask and Ale first, because
Sure.
I'm actually going there tonight. So
Yes. Yeah, we're looking forward to that. It was about 2 years ago or so, it was kind of approached to us. And the people that were owning it, and we're still good friends with too, they were just looking to get out, and St. Pete investors, and they were just looking to get out. So myself and my business partner from Red Barn Bar Venture was also interested. So that's when we took a look at that, and over the course of, it was quite a long time. It was a long journey to get to the point of actually purchasing, and purchased it the December 23rd of 2019, just in time for COVID.
Oh, nice.
So,
and we'll talk about that too.
Yeah.
I'm interested to find out.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, Cask and Ale, what kind of? It's a restaurant slash bar slash. What is it?
Yeah, I would say the best way to describe it would be a bar forward restaurant.
Okay.
So we definitely concentrate on craft cocktails, higher end bourbons, scotches, and we have that as our forward feature. Our back bar is very large, so that is the most prominent part of the restaurant bar, but we also concentrate on well-priced items on our menu, especially when we came out of COVID. Before COVID, we had a little bit of a different menu, but more dinner type of items. But once COVID came out, we kind of went a different direction towards a more affordable, but also making sure we just kind of were going a different direction. So it's really good, between your flatbreads and your homemade nachos to brunch items, which is a whole nother thing for Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah, brunch, right?
Yeah, so it's a really fun vibe in there. When you're in there, you feel like you should be having a craft cocktail or a bourbon or a scotch. It's a really nice ambiance. Yeah,
I love bourbon.
Yeah,
So I'll give you a little story real quick on the bourbon part.
Mm-hmm.
I never really had bourbon until we went to Tennessee back in January.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in Tennessee, and we went to Nashville, and I went to all these different places, and they had all these different bourbons there. And I was like, they were like, you gotta try bourbon. As soon as I tried bourbon, I got hooked.
Yeah.
I was like, this is way better. And I used to be a wine drinker, and now I won't drink anything but bourbon.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, I'm a bourbon guy now.
Yeah, I do love bourbon as well, and I'm on the wine train a little bit sometimes. But man, it's the complexity of the different types, or just different areas, different waters, different distillation. It's really incredible how many different things there are. And yeah, it's really taken off, in the last 15 years. It's really
it's crazy how much, especially you go up to Tennessee and all the distilleries that you see up there and everything else, and it's like, wow, this has really grown.
Yes.
It's almost like going on a wine tour, but a bourbon tour.
Sure, and the fact that there are other areas and regions of the U.S. that are putting out great bourbons, and the Northwest and those areas with their different types of water, and they're just doing a really nice job with different things. So it's nice it's not just the same song and dance. It's always something new, something different, something kind of current.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what would you say your signature drink is?
People really enjoy our cask old fashioned. It's not necessarily much different than a normal one, but it's with a little twist that we do. And I really wish I could speak on all of our craft cocktails because and what goes into them, because our bar manager and GM, they've done a great job with curating that. I wish I could speak on all of the ingredients for all of these, but I do know that the Cask Old Fashioned is definitely one of our most popular ones, and we're actually going to be launching our, say, totally new, but a newer drink menu coming out in a couple weeks. So that'll be, I have some new. We have featured seasonal cocktails as well.
Okay.
With the fall,
right,
the
fall,
winter.
winter.
So some things that kind of go with the theme of the whatever season that we're in. So we've got quite a few, up to about 20 different craft cocktails that we do.
Wow.
So that would probably be our most popular one. And then with our seasonal ones, it definitely is a hit. With Christmas coming up, we'll be doing. Right now with the pumpkin stuff with the fall, and then Christmas coming up, we have some really good stuff. So, cool. Yeah.
What about, okay, so one of the things I'm always interested, because, like, here's the thing. So when I was younger, I always wanted, I worked in the restaurant business for a long time. And I started out as a busboy, worked my way up to a prep cook, to a cook.
Yeah.
And I thought for sure I was going to be in the restaurant business until I saw what it takes to be in the restaurant business. Yeah. So as far as the menu is concerned, how did you guys come up with it? How did you think about it? Because, it's hard. I mean, the thing is like, you got to have a good menu to draw the people in, and you have to have good food. So what goes into that, and how do you decide what's going to be in a menu?
Yeah, the first thing is kind of figuring out what your concept is. So if your concept is going to be, such as, if you're going to go for the seafood part of it, then you're, a seafood restaurant, then kind of curate towards that. With being a concentrated bourbon craft cocktail kind of a place, it can lend itself to smaller plates, different items that will go better with those type of drinks. So when we kind of made our first menu before the COVID hit, we went a little bit more of a seafood, but we also went a little more towards the smaller plate portions as well, just due to the fact of who we are. So whether it be if you're a sports bar, you're going to do sports bar type food. If you're going to be that when you sit down, you look at your configuration with your kitchen and what you have there, your equipment, what you can do. Some kitchens don't allow for a certain type of foods. You just can't. Right. You just can't have enough room to put them anywhere. So all of those have factors into what you're doing. So when you sit down and for what we did, especially after COVID, we just sat down and said, okay, what is our most if we happen to have to close again, we wanted to make sure we didn't have a lot of waste. We wanted to make sure it was little faster things to be made, but that still went with our bourbon type of concept. So shareables, different things like that. So that's an important part to our menu, is being able to share with others, because that's kind of what our focus is when you're going to a type of place like ours is. We get a lot of larger parties and 5, 6, 7 people coming together, and so they have a lot of things to share. So
that's awesome.
That's what it takes. It just depends on really the concept that you're doing.
Right, trying to figure it all out, make it all match the drinks to the food and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it just has to really go. I mean, we would not be a pizza and wings place. That's just not what we are. And
not
they're
a beer place, like kind of, but that makes sense.
So that's what goes into that. So
So you talked a little bit about COVID, because I think the restaurants were hit probably the hardest with COVID, with being shut down and everything. So how did you get past that? Because that's always the question that I have, is it's tough. I mean, I'm sure that you had to close down for a little bit, right?
Yes. Yeah. We were closed for a little over, I would say about 3.5 months. And then when we came back, it was the 25% capacity. So during that time, we just took advantage of that and did some curated different kind of some more cocktails. And from that standpoint to just schematically doing a couple different things inside the restaurant, the bar. You don't ever want to close, but the silver lining is at least you can take advantage of that and do things that no one will ever close for a week at a time. That's just it's almost like you wouldn't even think of doing anything like that. But taking advantage of that and doing things that you would never be able to do if you were always open, or if you needed to be open in a couple of days. So we just took advantage of that as much as possible. Tried to keep, we kept trying to pay people just to keep the rent up and keep groceries and those type of things that really lends itself to keeping a good staff. And we didn't lose anybody. If anything, we had to get a couple more employees when we reopened, once the 50% and then the full capacity opened. So it was rough, but you try not to look at it's hard not to look at it in a negative light, but what can you do? Because you can't just sit there and complain about it. You have to just what can we do now to make this better when we reopen, rather than, oh, poor me, what am I going to do now? So that's just the outlook that we took. And it went really well. Everybody was, we did a lot of just making sure that everybody, are you good? Do you need a few dollars here and there? What can I do to help you? So when we do reopen, we're good to go. So, and luckily, the restaurant industry, and we have a very large patio outside. So when we reopen, we could have that. So we could have some sales to start paying well again after we reopened because of that. So luckily we had that. Whereas the bar scene, I couldn't, we're closed for 6 months, and there was no, you're indoor, and that was much rougher. But with the restaurant, it was just a way to, let's start streamlining some things. Let's get some things out of the way. Let's do some schematic things, and that's what we did.
What's cool is what I was hearing you say is that you just didn't let it stop you. A lot of times you'll hear people say, well, poor me, like you said, and they'll be like, well, I guess I'm just going to have to find something else, or I'm going to have to do this, or, and that's one of the things that really why we do this podcast is because there's other options. You just got to figure it out, right? If it means something to you, which I think a lot of times most business owners, it becomes their baby, and they want to take it to the next level, or take it to whatever level, or when they do run up on obstacles like this, they say, okay, what can I do? I don't want to lose my employees. I don't want to stop my business because this is everything that I poured into it, So how do I because unfortunately we just never know. This may happen again. And so, nobody expected this. Nobody ever expected for us to close down.
Sure.
And so, but it's just one of those things that you can look at and say, you know what? We overcame it. It was an obstacle we overcame, and we made it through. So with that being said, obviously now the business, has Cask and Ale always been Cask and Ale the whole time that it's been there, or like the previous owner called it Cask and Ale as well, or?
Yes, that was the name that we inherited. It's a great name. There was actually, the original one was in St. Pete, and so once they opened the Sarasota location, they actually sold that one in St. Pete, so it's just the only one. And it's the only restaurant that's been in that building. It's a newer building. So, it's always been Cask and Ale. We have a very signature kind of wall where when you take pictures there, where you are. It's really cool that anytime on any social media, you take a picture next to that with like a chevron looking wall, wood paneling kind of thing there. Makes it very distinct. So, it's really.
Do you know how they came up with the name?
I honestly don't. I mean, obviously it has to do with with casks being a large bourbon Scotch kind of a place, and the beer selection is solid. We have 10 different taps. Try to keep it. We have a few different domestics, but try to keep it Florida. Almost all of them, if not all the other ones, are Florida breweries. Nice. So that's kind of what they came up with that, and it was it's a great name. It really is, and that's why we're contemplating doing some different things with it. When we first purchased it, it wasn't going to necessarily always be a same kind of concept, but once we kind of got into it and were able to kind of bring the brand back up, which was the hard part, it just kind of just took off and was well received by everybody in the area. And I think it was kind of I never want to say it was needed, but it was one of those things that was I think a small hole in the downtown area that could really afford to have a place like that. And there's a couple of really good craft cocktail other places downtown that are excellent, but there's enough young people down there, and there's enough of a need and a want for that. And so I think we're filling that void very well.
Yeah, because that's the thing is, there's a lot of competition down there.
Yeah.
So, sure. There's a lot of restaurants. There's a lot of different places to go. So, that's the one thing that, how do you, decipher between you and somebody else? How do you go from being, all right, I want to go to Cask and Ale? Because we're doing a happy hour tonight there with Preferred Shores, a real estate company. And they are, when we told them about it, they're all excited. They know all about you guys and everything else, and they love that place. So that's one of the things is you got to figure out how, because I know the restaurant business is tough. It's super competitive. There's a lot in there. Yeah. One of the things I do love about downtown Sarasota is that it's not chainy. You know what I mean? And there's no chains in there. And so I do love that, and it's more of that. So I guess that's one of the things that you guys set yourself apart on is, what you guys have, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, for sure. In going with the competitiveness, each one of us still has a little bit of a different vibe to it, whether it be a smaller, more intimate, whether it be our place, a little more area, taller ceilings, more of a patio ambiance to it, and other ones that have really good, not that we don't have good food, of course, but they have a little bit more of a different curated menu that's their thing. And I love going to all these places. We all share in the same kind of clientele, and I love when other people I'm going to go down the street to, whether it be State Street, whether it be Boca, whether it be any of those locations. Absolutely, because they're always going to come back, and it's not all about stay in my place, stay here. It's all about sharing. Everybody, I want everybody to have a different, everybody wants to go out and do different things. You don't want to just sit in the same spot all the time, right?
Right.
Have one or two here, then you go to another spot.
Oh, we used to call it episode 1, episode 2,
yeah, there you go.
three.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So depending upon which bar we went to.
Yeah, sometimes you don't make it to 4 and 5, but it's so you just get a little different bite to eat in these different places and drink and a different ambiance. And now with the weather changing a little bit more, you can enjoy the patio area,
right,
which we have a very nice one of. And so yeah, it's just nice to see downtown changing a little bit more towards a younger vibe, and while not going away from who Sarasota has always been with the art, with all of those type of places that have always been downtown and the coastal feel, but at the same time changing a little bit, and everybody needs to change with the times. And I think downtown is starting to do, started some years ago, but really starting to step it up on that end.
You definitely see a younger generation coming in than you used to.
Mm-hmm.
People are staying here. They're not trying to leave Sarasota like they used to.
Right.
And so it's like one of those things is like, before it's like, well, I don't want to live here because it's such an older generation. But you're definitely seeing younger people staying. And I mean, I don't know if it'll ever be a St. Pete or
right,
or a Tampa or anything like that, but it's definitely switching, and it's definitely getting younger, and it's nice because that's the thing is like you need to have both, I think, in some ways, but at least you getting that, and they're not leaving anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's good to see that kind of people. So with that being said, so let's back up a little bit, and we're going to talk a little bit about your previous. Okay, so you were a college basketball player. So,
yes, I played college basketball at Jacksonville University.
Okay, so what was that like?
Man, it was. I think I learned more in that 4 years than the rest of my life. Honestly, I mean, it was you go, a lot of times you go to college to kind of learn about yourself and life in general, and between playing college basketball, getting a degree, being in a fraternity, like all those things was a very you learn how to manage time, you learn how to manage people, you learn how to take criticism very well, which is important, and my coach was Hugh Durham, who he's top 25 of all time Division I basketball wins. He's been to numerous Final Fours with different teams, so learning from him and learning, like I said, how to take criticism, but how to just start becoming you're not a child, a boy anymore, becoming a man, and learning that was aside from just basketball was really eye-opening, and I'm so thankful that I did that. The basketball portion of it was great, being able to travel to different arenas and different areas, and you just playing basketball, something you love to do. And I played those 4 years and loved it, and I was ready to be finished. I was ready to be finished, but I loved every up to the last practice. It was really enjoyable. But playing those big time schools and going to play in the Texas and the Iowas and the Oregons, and it was a lot of fun. It really was. My teammates every year, we never had any issues. We loved each other, and it was a lot of fun, man. Really.
Did you ever think about going pro?
No, I could have had the opportunity. I think I had the opportunity to go to Australia and England if I really put my mind to it, and there was some talk about it, but I didn't love it. I loved doing it while I did it, but that could never be my focus. I like to do too many different things. So just doing basketball would have been great to live in a different country and to experience that, but that just wasn't what I was looking for at the time. And so yeah, it was not the could have possibly, but just didn't work out, and just because I didn't want it to, I just wasn't ready for it.
So then you moved back here, right?
Yeah, moved back to Sarasota and came back to worked at the Sarasota Ale House. I worked there since 1998. So every summer I'd come back from college and do that. Open a couple of ale houses in Jacksonville while I was there as well in college, and just worked there for a couple years again. And that's when I moved on from there. And actually, that's when I started at Red Barn as a door guy, kind of a security, if you will, on Friday and Saturday nights. And that's how I started my journey at Red Barn, 2004.
Okay, so then you started there, and now are you part owner of Red Barn?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So
how did that come about?
The ownership part of it came in 2012 when I was working at a now prominent seafood restaurant that I was supposed to be a part of long term. Didn't work out, but so after I left that, I was approached by someone that I had worked with previously at Red Barn, and as an older gentleman that has had a bar in Sarasota for decades, and he was the managing partner pretty much there, and he was looking to get out, and he was looking for the perfect partner, if there is one, and to move along to. He loved working with me, saw what I did at the seafood restaurant, and was really eager to, kind of felt like this is the right person, because he really took the Red Barn and made it kind of what it is today, which is much more of a, just a great industry, just your dive bar kind of place to go. And it was his baby, as you talked about earlier. You take it on as your own. It's kind of your baby. He kind of did that. So he felt that I would continue that on, and not by changing things. And, because I had worked there for numerous years before. So I was familiar with clientele, which you have to be a part of a place like that.
Exactly.
And familiar with the clientele, familiar with my partners, who are also the owners of Geckos. They're my partners as well. So familiar with them. Yep. And so it just was kind of a perfect storm of, he was looking at that time. I was just getting out of something, wanting to get into something again. And so, yeah, it just kind of occurred like that. And yeah, that's
crazy.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes, you just never know. And that's the thing. So now you got started. So then you became owner of Red Barn, and then, and now you're owner of Cask and Ale, right? But then you have something else, and that's one of the things that, I really think if anybody could take anything away from this podcast today, is and this is just what I really believe, is coming up with multiple streams of income.
Sure.
And, just don't focus on one thing. Great. I want you make whatever your business is your baby. For me, my mortgage business is what pays my bills, and that brings in the money, but it's not everything that I do.
Sure.
And so and you have multiple businesses. So you have another one that you have. Tell us a little bit about that one.
It's a definitely a different industry, but it all has to do with service and hospitality. That is my passion. I know it's a very big umbrella, but I love being in that industry. And this is you'd call it an amusement company, where we have everything from jukeboxes to your digital jukeboxes to pool tables, golden tee, golf games, and your putt and bowling games that you see in different bars and restaurants. Crane, the crane games where you have stuffed animals.
Things?
Yep, claw games.
That, huh?
Yep. Quarter pusher games, that little things like that, and we've got and also it's kind of a dying breed, and people are very surprised when they still see them, but cigarette machines that are still out there. And
you were telling me about that, and I was like, really? I was like, cigarette machines are still out there?
Yeah, the person that does all the work for my cigarette machines, Catherine, she's great, and she's probably taken more pictures in the last 6 months doing that, because everybody is, what are you here for? Are you putting there's a cigarette machine here? Can I take a picture with it?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's just such a, and it's the old pull, the old pull system.
Ones.
So
yeah, you put the $2 or probably $5 now, right, to get a pack of cigarettes.
Oh, it's $9-10 now. I mean,
is it really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my.
That's what cigarettes are costing nowadays. So between it all, you've got 40 plus locations between Boca Grande and Anna Maria Island, and it is a lot of fun to be able to go into different bars and restaurants, seeing. I enjoy people. I enjoy every walk of life, every type doesn't have to be, you could have your lowest income and your highest income person sitting right next to each other. And when you're going back and forth buying drinks for each other, that's, the camaraderie that I thrive on. I really enjoy that. And so seeing the different areas from Inglewood and Punta Gorda to Anna Maria, Bradenton, it's really, really fun to go into just to see that, and just providing entertainment for them while they're there. And it's a fun business that's you'd never think of it. When you're sitting at a restaurant or a bar, you're like, I wonder who owns these, or does the location own them?
I always thought it was just a location. I never really thought about somebody else owning them. And I was like, when you were telling me about it, I was like, wow, this is like kind of cool.
Yeah.
So how'd you get into that?
Well, funny that about the person that I bought Red Barn from, he also had a small one of the amusement companies as well, and just with a few locations, but it was just nice side cash, and it was an enjoyable thing. Just this kind of the same thing I just described. He could go to a few different places, say hey to people, and just kind of be around people while he's there, doing your little collections here and there. But so that's kind of where I got into it, was learning about that. Once he got a little bit older and was not able to do all the any kind of fixing and repairs to collecting the money, I did it for him for numerous years. So I started learning about it a little bit more just with those few locations. And then a gentleman that's been doing it for 35 plus years, that's why he had so many locations. He was like, I'm ready to get out. And so we had probably around a 2.5 year conversations about this. There was numerous times that I thought it wasn't going to happen, and it just we went months without talking about it, and kind of revisited again, and it just kind of made it happen. Whether one way or another, I really enjoyed the aspect of this, like you said, different, not just bar or restaurant, but just having still hospitality, but just a different way of doing it. And so it just was always something I really wanted to do. And, there were two things I really wanted in those few years, and I was able to accomplish both, getting the restaurant and doing this amusement company. And I love it. It's, it's only 6 months in, but it's fun. It's labor intensive, but I enjoy that. I enjoy being a part of that. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. So you've been down the road a long time now, been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to anybody who wanted to get into the restaurant business, or what advice would you be like, okay, this is something you should do, this is something you shouldn't do?
Yeah. That's a very
broad question.
It's a broad question, but it's a great question, because a lot of people, there's nothing that I wasn't ever necessarily taught anything, like I was shown things, and I would like to think one of my better attributes is paying attention and observing, not necessarily waiting for somebody to teach you, but just watch and learn. And being able to do that would be, I was kind of afforded that option because of being, and in the restaurant bar industry, it sounds kind of elementary, but being honest and being it's such a difficult thing as finding honest people in the industry a lot of times. And just being that, and affording myself to be in the same room as the higher ups and the people that you can learn from, to ask them questions here and there, but just observing and what they're doing and asking the right questions, and not asking the same questions over and over, and being reliable. All those things that kind of sound, well, of course you want to be like that, but restaurants and bars are all about consistency. Nobody cares what you did a year straight. You did an awesome job. It's about what you're doing for the next right now. Mm-hmm. And consistency is probably one of the biggest pluses in an employee and a manager and an owner and a general manager, is so just being able to be consistent with that. And that's a very big umbrella as well, with responsibilities, and just being able to hire correctly. And there's just a lot of things. So I'd say consistency is one of the major things that I think I was good at. So being consistent, observation, learning from people, and it also helps. I never knew I was going to be in this when I was younger and asking these questions. but I was intrigued. I like numbers. I like to learn about why certain things are done certain ways and why costs are these and why do you do that, and some things that just didn't make any sense to me at all, but you learn about it and you figure it out. So, that would be, some advice to people is those kind of things, be consistent. And another thing is just don't burn bridges. So many people just get angry and they hold resentment towards if they get fired from somewhere or they feel they weren't treated correctly, or who cares? Don't burn that bridge.
Right,
Don't
exactly.
you never know what 10 years later is gonna. I don't know how many relationships that I've been able to come back to 10, 12, 15 years later because I never would burn a bridge. And I would, no matter how I was treated, or I've always been treated well, don't get me wrong, but no matter whatever occurred, I never just said, screw you, I'm never, and was angry towards them and did something that I would regret later on in life. Able to 10, 12 years later have that relationship again. We're all in a different place now, and it's worked out well. So that's a thing that I think a lot of people don't think about the future. They just think about the now.
Yep.
What can happen later on in life.
Well, one of the things you got to remember is, and this is even in my world, is Sarasota, even though it seems big, it's not big. It's a small town, and everybody eventually knows everybody, especially in what I do, probably in your restaurant world. Everybody knows everyone. They all talk, and it's like, so you got to remember, it's like, okay, we all work together,
Yeah.
whether, especially like if you're working downtown and you're all the same business owners. I'm sure you have other conversations with other business owners, and it just, and you just got to be careful, because that's the thing. Is like, if that's something that you're really wanting to be in, it doesn't take long for people word to travel.
Sure.
Then I want to kind of go back on to two of the things that you said. Is one of the things that you talked about is learning from other people, and I really believe in talking to a lot of people and business owners, successful people, is they think they know the way, and their way is the only way. And so what happens a lot of times is they don't want to take the advice from somebody. Somebody's always doing it bigger and better than us, right? And if you can't sit down and take some advice from people or learn from them people, then you're not doing it right, And so,
I mean, that's a very good point, is that even today, I mean, I am very open to anything and everything that they may say or have advice to, or I always say, I have no problem with you asking me a question, or can we do this, or can we change that? I said, just don't be afraid to hear the answer no. I could say no, there's no doubt about that. But I mean, so many times I always, when I was kind of figuring out that I really like this industry, and I said, well, maybe something's in this for me in the future, I would always remember not only how I was treated by my management or my higher ups, but how I would maybe treat people differently, or I would do different things for them, whatever it may be. And so I try to integrate that into today's life and today's hospitality in my bar or restaurant. And that is, I remember when I was working and I was in the trenches, when you're the busiest and you would say something to a manager and they'd say, well, it's kind of like it's my way. Okay, well, that doesn't work as well. I remember that now, and someone comes to me and says, hey, I'm in the trenches. This might work better. I'll think about it. I'll look into it, and they say, you know what? That's a great idea. I will be the first one to say, I don't know everything.
Right.
No problem with that.
And that's the thing. Things are always evolving. Things are always changing, and sometimes, as we get older, a younger person might see something a little different, or it may be to bring in a different crowd or whatever. And we just, sometimes we got to sit back and go, you know what, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or, you know what, this is what we're trying to do. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is you were talking about being consistent, and you got to think about it, because, when somebody walks into a restaurant or they walk into a certain establishment, they're coming there because you've been consistent. Because the thing is like, I know, like, and I'll use Ritz as an example, right? they know your name before you walk in, and they give you a certain thing because you're expecting that. You kind of know that, right? And you know what the being consistent is about, and that's how they built their brand and how they built their name. And it's just like, okay, just like in my world, it's like, okay, being consistent on how I do things, because that's what my realtor partners or whoever I'm working with is always looking for, is being consistent, doing what you say you're going to do. And it always comes across, because once you change whatever you're not being consistent at, then all of a sudden you see your business start dipping.
Yeah. And I don't know that any business that has moved on to numerous, either whether it be restaurant, whether it be mortgage, whether it be any clothing, doesn't matter what it is. I don't think there's a such thing as an inconsistent, huge brand. I mean, the reason that they become that is because of consistency, and it's a hard thing to do. I mean, it's not like it's just it has to be ingrained in you, and it's a mindset you have to do, and mindset of your employees and getting them to do that. And going back to my basketball days, that's exactly where I learned consistency, because every day, if I was on the road, I had to be somewhere 8 to 10 times a day. I had a time I had to be somewhere, and if you're on time, you're late, so you got to be 5-10 minutes early. So learning the consistency of every single day doing the same drill, shooting drills, dribbling, whatever it may be, every day doing it. That's kind of where I learned of the consistency and how important that is. And so that's where the mindset was ingrained in me. So it really paid off later on, remembering that and just having that mindset and trying to teach others the same thing. And it can be difficult, but I mean, with my employees, it's great. All of them I've had for a very long time. They've been tenured for years and years at Red Barn, and for Cask, I have some that have been there for a while too. So it really has paid off. But yeah, you just can't build a brand or build a successful anything really unless you have consistency. It's very difficult to do if you can.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's next?
Yeah, man.
What's going on?
Well, I mean, you're always looking,
Right.
So I mean, right now we're just with Cask doing a little bit more when it comes to our, maybe a small expansion of kitchen, and doing some. Like when we purchased Cask and Ale, we were anticipating doing a different concept, totally different concept, different brand, different name, different everything. But because of the ability we through my general manager, Owen, and a lot of our employees, we were able to bring the brand back because it was pretty down. So we kept it. So instead of changing everything, we're going to enhance things. So we've been able to do that. Slowly. With COVID, we weren't sure what was going to happen, but now we're a little more optimistic. So between doing some different patio ideas, and have a great interior designer for doing things inside, curating her curating things to be able to get these things. So we're enhancing the brand by getting more. We'll be getting more different tables, chairs, anything inside, all those furnishings. And just to do a better job with that. So that's what I'm kind of concentrating on right now. Other things come up, then I'm all ears. But got a lot going on now. But it's
always about keeping your ears open, keeping your ideas open.
Yeah.
It's like you just don't know, and maybe that right opportunity comes along or whatever. All right. So where can people find you? Where are you located at, and how do they get a hold of you?
Well, Red Barn Bar is at 2058 Bee Ridge Road. It's only a block away from 41. It is your local dive bar that you can go to. We're open 7 a.m. to 2:30 a.m.
Oh wow!
I always joke around and say 8 days a week, so you never forget. But so we cater to the. I'm there quite often, working, not always drinking. But we cater to all types in the mornings. We have our nurses and doctors. Afternoon, we have our our blue collar people that come in and their days off for other industry people. And then late night, we have our industry workers that get off of work and come in and have fun there. So that's at 2058 Bee Ridge Road. And then Cask and Ale is 1548 Main Street. We're right on between Lemon and Orange, right next to Evie's is a great neighbor of ours. So you can catch us there. And we have a social media, Cask Ale SRQ on Instagram, Facebook obviously as well. So you can catch us there, and we'll just we're there, man. You know, it's a lot of fun. We're just excited to see what this season brings to us, and moving away from COVID into positive things.
All right. Well, I wish you much success.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
having me.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
That's been awesome.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Make sure you check us out. Make sure you subscribe to us and watch this and catch us out on realhustle.com. And we'll talk to you next time.